So today we're going to be taking a look at the Future World Borders Part 1. Now, I know I did Alternative Future of the World Reformed and Alternative Future of the World. Now this is a little bit different. Well, not really, it's just got a different name. But those two series, they did well wise. But when I go to make another part, the whole system will crash, I'd lose the map. And it'd be a real pain to find out the exact borders and it'd just be a real pain. But I've managed to resolve that issue, hopefully. And now we're going to get into the Future World Borders. So, the first thing we see that is happening is obviously Russia invading Ukraine. This is the boring stuff that we get. Now, I'm going to try and make episodes a little bit longer and a lot more happen in them because I can only probably pump these out, I don't know, once a day. Yeah, I can probably only get these out, I don't know, once a day. So, it's going to be a real pain, but I'll have to do more in the videos. So, obviously, we see Russia and Belarus go to war with Ukraine. Don't they call it, like, I think they call it, like, Ukraina in, like, Russian. Or, no, in Ukrainian, they call it Ukraina, I think. Don't know why that was very off topic, but yeah. So, at this time, I'm not going to say anything to do with this time, but at the moment, Russia, or like in this timeline, Russia already owns Crimea, and the Donbass region is completely free. So, we're still going to take a look at what's going to go on. So, what happens is that Russia gets all its troops and begins to invade from Crimea. They invade up and take Kherson and Zambia. They push round into the Donbass region and take Luhansk and Donetsk. Now, the Belarusians cannot push down into Ukraine as they've got two good defences, and Russia is kind of getting humiliated here. They know that after the war they're going to have to rebuild their defences, and obviously they get pushed back. So, what exactly happens? Now, what happens is that Russia sort of just gives up and annexes regions in order to stop the huge sort of brawl that's going to go on into Ukraine, and it could make Russian morale even lower. But these regions do vote in favour of joining Russia. So we have Zambia, something like that, Donetsk, Luhansk, and Kherson. Or Kherson, I think it's Kherson. So anyway, yeah, we see, that is a horrible border, sorry guys. So this is the sort of front line we see. Well, not front line, but this is what we see now. They annexed a little bit of Kharkiv, most of it. And yeah, this is Russia now. They've gained a tiny bit of land, probably not all they wanted. They probably, if they could, they probably wanted all of Ukraine. But here, Ukraine is quite an unstable country now. So Russia, who is this big country here, just puts its own government into Ukraine. With Ukraine having its own government, Russia doesn't really want any more land from it, so they sort of leave it as it is. But they do manage to get, what's it called? Oh, I can't think. They do manage to get Moldova to join in Ukraine. Now we have, obviously, Ukraine, Belarus and Russia all being in an alliance, and NATO isn't happy about this, so we're going to actually take a look at NATO quickly. So I think this is every single member of NATO. I could be like one off maybe. I do know my countries of NATO very well, but I'm pretty sure these are the countries that are in NATO. I'm pretty sure. Now, in this timeline, we do see obviously Finland and Sweden have joined since they're going to be in there like real soon. But we do see a couple more members joining. So we see Bosnia and Kosovo. Or actually, no, we just see Kosovo joining in, along with Ireland and finally Georgia and Azerbaijan. Now, with these countries in NATO, stuff could really go down here. I mean, anything could happen around this region. I mean, you could have some sort of, say, Iran, because Iran hates Azerbaijan, so does Armenia. Iran could attack here. Boom, war with all of NATO, and that wouldn't be good for the world because Russia and Iran, and Russia and China, and India and Iran, and yeah, it'd spark World War III. So that's NATO. They're the current members. Now we're going to take a look at some other stuff going on, mainly sort of down in Indonesia. So we finally see the Indonesian Civil War break out, which is basically a huge war that people wanted, as different islands don't really believe in being the same country as some sort of dictatorship. And they don't like being in the CSTO, or they don't like being in any wars. So Indonesia basically rises up, or rebel groups rise up in Indonesia to basically topple the government and declare islands as their own, which Indonesia, I'm pretty sure they hate. So yeah, this is actually going to be quite interesting. So anyway, let's take a look at what we think would happen. So I think the first thing that would go on would be a couple of islands obviously breaking away. Now, let's do this, and then this. So the islands that would break away from sort of Indonesia, so if we colour in the country, which is, I think it includes all of these islands down here, this island here, this weird island here, this part of Papua New Guinea. Yeah, that's Indonesia. So the first island we actually see break away is the sort of part of Papua New Guinea. So, hold on, just need to do this. Anyway, blue part, and next. So we see Papua New Guinea, the entire island, break away just because they don't like Indonesia, and they're more preferred they prefer Australia, sort of. So they begin to push along these islands of Indonesia and make a couple of landings on these islands. They are now beginning to get funded by Australia and the Philippines and sort of everyone down here in the Pacific to sort of stop all this violence. Eventually they do manage to take this island here, and stuff doesn't go well. So rebellions pop up on the island of, I think this is like Vansena or something like that. But yeah, rebellions pop up, and they do manage to capitulate the top of the island. With this, now we see basically, this is what we see the front line as. So Indonesia is basically completely toppled. They've lost all their islands, and they might just come down to this island. So eventually they lose grip in this island and lose the entire place. And eventually they sign peace with the rebels, which wasn't, I don't think, the best idea, because they could have fended them off, maybe. They could have stopped them from going on the island. And now the rebels, it's basically up to the rebels of what they want to do with the country. I mean, they could fully topple the government, but that's not what they do. So we didn't really have to do a peace treaty, but basically this is its own island. I'm going to call this Zensa. I'm going to sort of call this Zenya. Zenya. That sounds like Kenya and some cool G character. That's Zenya. That's the new island of Zenya. We have just New Guinea. No, this is Papua New Guinea, but we do eventually see these two forming finally a united island, which is now just Papua New Guinea. This island declares independence along with all of these down here as their own countries. And that's just made a lot more countries now. So, obviously, we've got the New Guinea, so we've lost the country. Well, not really, because that wasn't ever its own country. But yeah, so now this is not all united, which is actually quite good, because you've got different islands, different nations. And these countries might want to join in some sort of alliance. So, that's obviously like Zenya, and that's New Guinea now. So, yeah. So now we see like a lot of tensions going on between the world, as obviously you've got Serbia and Kosovo, Ukraine and Russia, Georgia and Russia, the US and China and Taiwan, North Korea and South Korea, North Korea and Japan, and obviously Pakistan and India, Iran and Saudi Arabia, Iran and Turkey, and Turkey and Russia. So yeah, they're all like the possible things that could break World War III out. But yeah. So, what do we see going on? Now we see some stuff going on in Africa. I'm notably looking at you guys right here. So, obviously, you know, Ethiopian and Egyptian sort of relations are very poor at the moment, as they're basically, I think they're over a fight of the River Nile. I'm not entirely sure why. It's like, the River Nile for Egypt runs, like, not that. It runs into Ethiopia, but they still get mad, which is actually quite weird. It's very weird. But, yeah, so we see a war break out between these guys. Now, the river does run, I think, from up here down through Sudan. I know, runs down here and into Ethiopia. And, yeah, it runs into Ethiopia. I'm not sure why Egypt is getting angry at them, but they are, so, yeah. So now we're going to take a look at a war. So, Egypt declares war on Ethiopia. Now, they haven't really got any direct way of attacking each other since, I mean, this here. But this Sudan, or Egypt, does get Sudan to sort of join its sides. And they do, they break away and join Egypt's side. Eritrea joins the red team. Djibouti joins the blue team. Somalia goes into absolute chaos, as basically Somaliland joins the blue team. But it's not looking good for Ethiopia, I got to say that, as, I mean, they've got, Djibouti, and they're not really going to do anything. They're tiny, and they're against, well, Eritrea is alright. You just know you're not very strong at all. And then these two are quite strong. So yeah, this is what we see happening. So we see a bit of Ethiopian success in pushing up into Eritrea and managing to capitulate the country. And they're also pushing to South Sudan. South Sudani rebels do break out once again. And we have the full recognition of South Sudan. They then begin to push up into Sudan as they just want to topple the government. And sort of own, they just want to topple the government and own Sudan, because they want to make it like a better place. Sudan is going for absolute chaos, so, what's their name? These guys here, who are they? Oh, I've got the name. The Egyptians do manage to come down and push back the sort of Sudani revolution sort of looking thing. They do manage to push into Eritrea, not capturing the entire country, leaving most of the panhandle. But they do begin to plan naval wars. Down here into Somalia, Ethiopia starts its push and cuts the country in two, with them pushing down into the north and completely capitulate in the south. Now that they've sort of got this front line out the way here, they can finally focus on front line here, which the front line is now set across all of sort of this land here. So the Ethiopians do continue to push into Sudan with the South Sudani troops. Well, Egypt does continue to push into Eritrea. They push down, take Djibouti, and now this is the new front line. They're pushing in, but do not manage to take any of Somalia or even touch it, as Somaliland rebels are quite heavy. Sudan does manage to push down into South Sudan and take most of the country. Now, Ethiopia says now that since they're getting absolutely destroyed, if they surrender, South Sudan must retain peace and be let out, or they will basically never give up and they will continue attacking them and blaming them for things that they have done. So they encircle, and eventually, with them making peace, they sign this up as basically a good idea, because they don't really want to use more resources in a country that's offering up land for, like, they don't really want to give up on a country that's offering land just for a little exchange. So yeah, let's go and take a look at the peace treaty So, obviously, we have the release of South Sudan. It's not perfect borders at all, but it'll do. Now, stuff does happen. Now, Djibouti doesn't really make it. They lose a lot of... They don't really make it. They're now part of Eritrea, which is bigger. Somaliland gains its independence along with, obviously, South Sudan. But don't get it, they get it in a weird way. Now, they get a lot more land than expected. So, they get sort of this land here. And Ethiopia does gain land, I'd say. Now, they gain all of Somalia down here. Somalia shouldn't... Well, not that, that's quite political, but aren't really bothered to be a country anymore. Now, Ethiopia isn't going to make it much uglier. So, Sudan does manage to get quite a bit of... Not quite a bit, but a bit of Ethiopia. It's only really a border sort of change. And this does sort of correlate into a South Sudan change, which they're not happy about, but they still have to deal with it. Sudan also basically says to Eritrea, hey, if you give us this piece of your land here, we'll give you a huge chunk out of Ethiopia. They say yes, they lose, not their capital city, because their capital city is here, but they lose a lot of cities, but they gain like 1 or 2 as they get land from here. Now, I wouldn't say anyone lost land or anyone gained land in this, because, I mean, Somalia got absolutely destroyed, but I wouldn't say Ethiopia lost land, because they got a bit, they got like all this out of Somalia, but they did lose a lot. Now, with some very, very ugly Eritrea looking stuff now, because that is an ugly Eritrea. This is the New Africa. It's very ugly. So, South Sudan does want some protection, so they do decide to form a union with some of the countries down here. This turns into an even bigger union with Kenya joining. Finally, Tanzania does want to join this union. This is known as the East African Federation and could possibly soon become the Central African Federation. So with that, Africa is a lot more peaceful around here now, as everyone sort of got what they wanted. And a couple of peace treaties, Ethiopia is now not allowed to take any sort of stuff belonging to Egypt from the River Nile, as... I mean, the River Nile does run down here, and it still kind of runs into Ethiopia. I think it runs into the northern part and pushes down to Somalia. Well, actually, it comes down and then like that. Yeah, so they still have very good access to it. Yeah, so the world does look a tad bit different, not very different. I mean, the Indonesian Civil War wasn't that different. But anyway, we're going to get into our last 2 scenarios. One big war, one smallish sort of change. So, we see China sort of break out into some sort of huge war between loads of different factions, going to war with them. And yeah, it just breaks into utter chaos. So, China is a very united country. They've got a lot of different ethnic groups in there. We don't necessarily like China, I guess you could say. So, yeah, that's basically what happened. So, all of these countries who border China are now in huge trouble, as China is about to, get absolutely stampeded. So, what happened? So, this is the Republic of China, or, no, the CCP, and this is the country. So, we have Xinjiang, which is represented in green. Now, this isn't their full land, but this is like parts of the rebellion that they've taken. We have the Tibetan. That was really awful. The Tibet sort of region, which stretches about this far, which is quite cool. We have the CCP still controlling this lane into both countries, but we don't see this as well. So we see the sort of Taiwan backed Hong Kong South China Republic, which is what we see here. And now this is known as the Chinese Republic. They're friends with Tibet, but not with Xinjiang, if you know what I mean. And then finally, the final group we see in this war is a Manchukuo group who just, they're like, everyone else is revolting. We don't want our independence, but we might as well, as everyone else is revolting. So yeah, this is China absolutely messed up. So let's take a look at what happened. So Xinjiang does push down and cut off Tibet from expanding in the sort of north here. But they do manage to capture this area of Xinjiang first for them. Battle does begin between Xinjiang and Tibet, but eventually they say, right, let's become allies as we've both got a common enemy, and that is these guys here. The Republic of China is collapsing, or not the Republic of China, the CCP are collapsing as Beijing is taken and surrounded. The Republic of China is like really good friends with the Manchukuo Republic, so this does happen, but they managed to cut through. After a very short sort of Chinese rebellion and a lot of violence, we finally see China sort of break. And now it's left up to these guys. Now it's left up to them what borders they want to keep, what borders they want to change. So we're going to take a look at not really a peace treaty, but an after result of the Chinese Revolution. That's what we're going to call it. Not the Chinese Civil War, the Chinese Civil War and Revolution. So we see Tibet form, or basically Tibet become a country. Yeah, we see Tibet become a country, which is sick. They should have become a country. Oh no, that's very political. Probably shouldn't say that because I might have some Chinese in the comments and might get mad at me saying, oh, Tibet is a part of China and all that. Yeah, I can't get any borders, like, decent. That's alright. And we obviously have a good old Qing... Oh no, it's racist. We're going to have good old Xinjiang. And we have something unexpected, the Manchukuo Republic. Now, these guys are reasonably big. They're like same size as probably, I don't know, these guys. But now this is the Republic of China. So these guys are all in some sort of alliance. We've got the Republic of China. We've got Xinjiang. We have Tibet, and we also have the Manchukuo Republic. So yeah, that is what's gone on. We're going to take a look at one more scenario, which is just something pretty brief. This scenario is actually something in Europe, which is quite surprising, quite not. And we actually see Serbia get invaded and become NATOized. Anyway, if you guys did enjoy this video, make sure to smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, make sure to leave a comment down below what you think will happen in the next one.